Voices serves as the megaphone for individuals who have endured transformational change. By highlighting trials and triumphs, our desire is to create a safe space for pivotal conversations, which in turn will deepen the story and provoke hope for you, our listeners. As you may know, change is never easy, but it is inevitable. You are not alone in what you're facing. Your transformation is possible, purposeful, and now. And here's Aaron Wiggum, founder and managing director of New You, with this week's guest.
Hello and welcome to another edition of New Voices. My name is Aaron Wiggum and I'm your host. I also serve as the founding and managing director of New You. New You is a way for individuals to imagine, discover, and actualize a 2.0 version of yourself. New Voices, however, serves as a megaphone for individuals who have endured transformational and pivotal experiences, and they are here to tell their story. We have a wonderful guest for you today. You are in for a total treat. I know this man to be a visionary. I know him to be an advocate. I know him to be a thought leader. I know him to be an amazing strategist. And we're just going to have a wonderful conversation as he tells you the beautiful tapestry of his life and some of the work that he's doing to make America a better country and a better place for all of us. And so I bring to you none other than my good friend, my brother, Mr. Victor Hwang. Victor, welcome.
Thank you, Aaron. It's such a delight. That's the nicest introduction I think I may have ever gotten. So it's a real pleasure to be here.
All right. I'll send the invoice in the mail. So I start off every conversation. It's really a pleasure to have you. We've been wanting to have you for a little while now, and schedules, and everything kind of whenever. But we finally got you on, and so I want to make the most of these next 30 minutes or so, right? And so I just want to start off. I ask every guest this question to start. What is the Victor Hwang story?
Well, the story goes back. It goes all the way back to my parents. My parents were immigrants from Taiwan, and so they came here to this country with $300 and 2 bags of laundry. Literally, they still have like these canvas bags with their names and addresses written on it that they were going to, and they came to pursue the American dream. And in many ways, they put the hopes and aspirations of the American dream. They vest them with their kids as well. Mm-hmm. And so they came as educators, but they always dreamed of better. So when I was lucky enough to be able to get into Harvard when I was in high school, they wanted to send me, but they couldn't afford to send me. So they had to take out a second mortgage on their house, and they had to start a business on the side. And that started on the evenings and the weekends on the side, and then eventually grew into their business. And that business eventually paid for college for myself and my sister and helped build their American dream. So wow. I kind of got to watch all that happen, and I got to see the power of entrepreneurial aspiration and how, and then I also saw how hard it was. I saw how to go from zero, or $300 up to build a life. It's just, It's hard. And it's, there's many people and along the way to help you, but it's not like the system's designed for the little person to make it. Right. You've got to really, you got to fight hard. And so I saw that. I remember when I was a kid, my mother she was pregnant with me. I don't remember when she was pregnant with me, but she was pregnant with me, and she had to take a job filling like vending machines at a laundromat. Like that was that's how they made extra cash just to, get by. Wow. And so they really they started from nothing. And then I've just seen the power of being able to start your own business. And so I've spent 25 years of my career now, basically all my working career, in this idea that entrepreneurship and lifting people up by giving them the means to start and build new enterprises is really the path. Yeah. And so I've been doing this now for 25 years, Aaron. I don't know how it happens. You turn around and you've been doing this stuff for a long time. And so whether I've started businesses, I've invested in them, I've sold them, I've shut them down. Yeah. And but I've also got involved in building organizations to help entrepreneurs, running nonprofits, and then consulting, working with cities, states, and even national governments on how to build entrepreneurial economies and innovation economies. And then ended up getting called in by the Kauffman Foundation, the big philanthropy, which is how I ended up meeting you. Right. Kauffman has been arguably the leading philanthropy in the world in entrepreneurship for the last 30 years. And I got to run the entrepreneurship department there. And from there it led to the work I'm doing right now, launching this group called Right to Start. And we can talk about that at the right time too.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to throw that in there too. And so I just want to go back through there. So what part of the country did you come? Were you in when did you grow up in?
Well, I grew up. My parents, because they came as educators, I was born in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Then we lived in Iowa, then Indiana, then Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And then I ended up going to college in Boston. Then I lived in North Carolina, Chicago, DC, and then the Bay Area, and then Kansas City, and now back in Southern California again. So I've been moving around my whole life.
Got it. Okay. All right. And so can you talk a little bit about your experience growing up in the South or in the middle part of America as a young Taiwanese student? What was that like? How did you find your voice amidst not much representation, I'm assuming, in the parts of the country that you're talking about?
Yeah, it's lonely. You grew up between Indiana, Iowa, and Louisiana, and then Texas. Especially, this is like, I'm older than I look. This is like in the 70s and the 80s.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm like, this,
yeah.
we can't skate over this. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's lonely. And, there were very few Chinese American or Taiwanese American kids to hang out with back then. And then if you look at the media back then, even until recently, the portrayals of Asian Americans was highly negative. We were very, very stereotyped.
Right.
And the reality is when you get older, you realize no one really lives up to their stereotype. Everyone's a complex human being.
Exactly.
Right? Every community is a complex community. Every person is their own person.
Exactly.
But you get stereotyped and people think in simple categories.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I would say the negative, of course, is that it's kind of lonely and you feel you're not kind of quite sure of your identity.
Mm-hmm.
But the upside is you kind of, I know a lot of kids who are like me, grew up like that. You kind of become a chameleon. You kind of learn to blend in anywhere. And you're neither in any one culture and you're not separate. You just kind of blend in everywhere because you need to. And in some ways, I think that's led to my life today, where a lot of my work is in seeing the meta connections and the patterns of of America. Like I think I get America better than 99% of Americans because I've lived in so many places. I've seen all the things that happen. I know people's assumptions. I know the baggage. I know the good stuff as well. And I've been to all 50 states, and I've also been to over 50 countries. Mm-hmm. And I've just seen enough now to know what makes society tick, and so that's the good stuff. I think that's the upside of being a minority in a community is you kind of see things for as they really are.
Yeah.
There's like, you see the truth of stuff because you're not bought into the establishment in any way because you never were part of it.
You never were a part of it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's the perfect segue that you set that up so beautiful. I appreciate it because that's exactly where I was going with things. When you think about the work that you're doing now and what informs that work, the passion that you do it with and the compassion that you have in your advocacy work. And like all of that is, I'm assuming, informed and inspired by a very much lived experience. And being that you, like you just said, you're navigating a system that necessarily wasn't made for you, right? And so it doesn't really, what it does is it gives you a lens of hope. It gives you a lens of promise. It gives you a lens of, go get it out the mud, right? And watching your parents load vending machines so you can go to Harvard and do it. Like, I mean, the things that you start to see come to play as these different roads converge and as life starts to make sense, as you grow and you begin to become who you're supposed to be, you realize that the undertone behind all of that is this lens of empathy because you understood what it felt like belonging or not belonging, or making a way and not making a way, or being included or not being included, right? You understand both lenses. You talked a little bit about big cities and rural places. You talked a little bit about, you talked about big cities and you talked about rural places, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding both, I mean, you've kind of blazed a trail that only you really can, speak to, for lack of a better way of saying it, because you've lived all these different types of that. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of your flowers right there.
No, thank you.
Your lived experience blazing a trail for us, and however many people you're going to open doors for to be able to follow, right? And it's not easy, So my next question to you is, when you start to think about Victor the man, what were some things that really, what were some goals that you had that kept you focused and on task amidst the evolution of life as we know it?
The goals, I think, what you said earlier was so nice. I think, I don't know where it comes from. It's probably just being raised the way I was raised, but I definitely know what it's like to be left out, and I definitely know what it's like to be looked down on.
Yeah.
And I think that's so much of what drives like the issues in the world, right? Are people that are left out and looked down on. And that's what gives rise to, anger and apathy and resentment and negativity and polarization and all the things that we think, you look at the headlines about what's wrong with America or what's going, what's not working right. And it's at the root of it, it's that. And it's not just one part of the population, it's many parts of the population that feel left out or looked down on.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of what's led me to the work I do now. In terms of the goal, I don't know. There was no master plan when I was young. Okay. It just kind of evolved. Like I met one person randomly one time who said something like, something that if you think of life as like walking down a hallway with all these doors, mm-hmm. and that most people don't bother to open all the doors as they're walking down the hallway. They just got their hallway to walk down. They walk down it.
Right.
But there's a real joy and also a real power in opening every door that you pass by, even if it's just a crack, right? And see like what's behind that door. And I think I've pretty much done that. I think there was no one goal. The goal was in many ways just like open every door and look inside and see what's there and see where it leads you, and constantly be curious and willing to try something. And sometimes it hurts. You open the door and you get a jolt of electricity.
You got a surprise in there. Yeah.
There's a monster behind it. And it's like, okay, not the right door. And you close it and you move to the next door.
Right.
But at this point now, in my 50s, I've learned that so many people are scared of opening doors. Yeah. They actually, it's like the older you get, the more scared you get of opening doors.
Yeah.
And, and I think that's probably been the main thread, is just like keep on trying to see what's behind that next thing.
So to tag to that question, how does it feel to be able to open those doors or hold those doors open for others? So not only, using your same analogy, not only are you opening the doors in the hallway, but you're creating ways to hold the door open for other people. How does that feel to you?
No. Well, I feel it's like the best gift I can pass on is to stick a foot in the door for the next person or the next 10 people or the next 1,000 people. It's just to keep that door open. Yeah. I think you're right. Most people go through it and they're like, "Oh, this is a good door. I see. There's rainbows and
right behind them.
Rainbows and bunnies." It's like, or they say, "I deserved it." I deserve that door.
True.
As opposed to realizing, well, maybe there's a lot of luck behind it and a lot of other people helping me get there.
Right.
So, yeah, I feel it's sort of, I guess it's what I wished everybody did, but sadly it's not what the world is. But I think the world only turns by people keeping those doors open for others behind them.
Absolutely.
But there's enough of us that keep the world going, that believe in that.
Exactly. I'm a huge proponent of, especially when people are walking in purpose, I'm a huge proponent of the fact that there's somebody in your next season holding the door open for you. Mm-hmm. I say it all the time. Like most people, when you look back over your life, you got to where you've achieved because somebody held the door open for you at some point. It may not have been long. It may have been a phone call or a interview, or maybe you didn't have to do an interview because this person held the door open. But if you look back, most people, very few people have made it on their own. Let's say it that way. And then for the people who start to really think about how they fulfill purpose in the work that they do, usually somebody held that door open for them to be able to walk through it and achieve what they've achieved. So that's just, I think it's, it just speaks volumes to the nature of the work that you're doing. And so we're going to go here into that. So when I first met you,
and I'll add one thing too, which is There might be that one person about that held the door.
Yeah.
But what I've learned now is there's thousands of people that helped you hold doors in ways you'll never know.
You'll never know. That's true.
Because they did work, whether it's like you can say like, oh, the teacher, my third grade teacher helped me out. But right. How about all the people behind that teacher that help that teacher out every single day, right? Exactly. And so it's like all these people leveling up and holding up, the people that you can see. You can only see a few,
yep.
But there's so many people behind that actually make it possible. And if you think about society in that way, it's actually a beautiful thing. It's like lots of people all just passing the torch forward to each other.
Absolutely, lighting each other's light. I'm reminded of when I used to was the bursar at Penn State for a while, and when I was there, that's who you pay your tuition bill to. So I remember as a student when I was in undergrad, they said we're going to kick you out. You've been here 2 weeks. You've been eating the food. You've been doing this. You got to go. You got to get out the dorms. And I called my dad, and my dad worked out a payment plan, and I was able to stay in school. Well, fast forward 15 years later, I'm the bursar now. And I remember what that feeling was like, right? And so I can't tell you how many hundreds of students that I sat there with the parents and worked out payment plans and figured out, and actually had to send in meetings and vouch for them. No, they're going to have the money this Friday. I promise you, they have $600 coming. Just let's hold off. Let's not put them out. And so actually becoming an advocate, because I understood what it felt like when they told me at 19 years old, 20 years old, you got to go. Right. Mm. And so there's so much of that happens. Like you said, there's people who you never even know what they did to open the door or to hold the door open or support the person who is holding the door open. And so this is powerful. I wanted to, where I first met you was the eShip Summit. And I just want to talk briefly about that. I still say that eShip is bar none the best conference I've ever attended. Okay. And what I loved about it was the level of detail that every person, that you all made sure that every person had an overwhelming experience, whether they were a policymaker, a founder, a donor, whatever role you played in the ecosystem, there was something for you. And what I particularly remember was the plenary and how you broke out into those pods, and you used a company called Mixtros, I believe, I think was the name, ladies out of Alabama. We ended up talking to them later as they mapped out on you could see the people moving through the pods, and it was just amazing to see the level of detail and intentionality. And when I think about all the planning that had to go into it, a lot of times it's hard to see the planning actually felt in the delivery. But that eShip was one of the few things I've ever been to in my life, and I've been to hundreds of conferences, that I actually felt the planning in the delivery. And so kudos to you. You want to just talk a little bit about that and how that kind of, it contributed to your path?
Yeah, sure. The eShip, it was a eShip Summit, and a whole series of programming came out of that. And maybe going back on why we even created it in the first place. And it was twofold. One, because I've been doing this work for so long, I realized that the entrepreneurship sector had never had a place to get together before. That everyone was doing it in their own little buckets, their own geographies, their own little sectors, right. And that there were many thousands of organizations and tens of thousands of people that were in this work, but there'd never been a home that could bring them together. Mm-hmm. And that there was so much learning because people were learning little fragments of work, but they weren't learning from each other collectively. Right. And so we needed to bring that together. The other piece was I realized that the work needed to shift from people were thinking in terms of like specific programmatic solutions in isolation, like point solutions. Like, I'm going to do this one thing and that's going to be enough, as opposed to realizing that their work was part of a whole ecosystem, that it was a 360-degree problem where everything touched everything. Because in entrepreneurship, of course, everything affects entrepreneurs, right?
Everything.
From the policy to the capital markets to the laws to the legal services, the accounting services, to the talent,
right,
workforce, education. Everything affects entrepreneurs, right?
Yes.
So you can't do it in isolation, and that we need to shift people's thinking to realize that this was a whole ecosystem-wide problem. It wasn't something you could fix just by being solo. Right. And so I think we were able to achieve those things. We ended up having over like 1,500 people from all 50 states, and the group we brought in, the Value Web was the name of the group. Mixtros was, I think, the guy that was doing the music, but he also was more than a musician. He also kind of got like the group to sing together. Like we actually combined, we fused it all together.
Nice.
But the group was called the Value Web, and the Value Web, I'd known my friend Todd Johnston there and a bunch of that group for. I've worked with them for like 15 years now. But they are some of the best in the world at basically making sure, like I mentioned before, people feel it's easy. I know what it feels like to be left out and to be looked down on. Yeah. They make sure that every idea, every person feels included and that their ideas are lifted up. Yeah. And that is not easy to do, right? And then you got to shape the whole experience where every idea makes it into the bigger picture. Right. And at the end, hopefully at the end, people feel like I contributed to this. I made a difference. I didn't just show up and attend. I actually was a participant and a contributor to making things better for everybody. Right. And I think, that's that. And so that's the magic of it. But there is I think it's a way of doing conferences. You can either have it where you have the sage on a stage, right? You got one person talking out to everybody. Right. Or you could do it where it's highly interactive and everyone builds something together. And we chose the latter. And it's much harder to do and much more time consuming, but much more rewarding in the end.
Very rewarding. I mean, it left such an indelible mark on my life and my journey. I ended up founding a business incubator based off of that. Well, not based off of it, but like, right after that. And it just, it really changed the way I thought about conferences, and still do think about conferences. I'm like, it's the bar. It's like, oh, this, it doesn't, like you said, sage on the stage, somebody's just talking at you, whatever. You get a bag, you get a couple pamphlets, you go on about your business, right? You don't remember who you met. You don't really remember what, right? But this, I have contacts today that are still in my life because of how well that was coordinated and orchestrated, and not just coordinated and orchestrated, but also executed, like the how thorough it was. And so I'm really grateful for your vision and the Kauffman Foundation and the folks that did all that work. It was absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you, man. That was one of our goals, is to change the way people think of conferences in the entrepreneurship sector. And
you did it.
We did it with one guy. That's all that matters.
Yeah, you did it. You did it for sure. So let's segue. How did that kind of catapult into Right to Start? And so I love what you said when you opened up. You said that entrepreneurs didn't have a space to convene, right? And so you created that. Now this is a space for advocacy, right? And so, or policy even. And so can you talk a little bit about how the segue from convening to now the advocacy work that you're doing with Right to Start?
Yeah. Well, just like eShip was an answer to the question of, where can entrepreneurs convene and what can they call home? Right. Right to Start is an answer to the question of, where's the voice of entrepreneurs in the American system? And if you think about it, like every issue in American life that matters has a infrastructure that advocates for it. Right. You can believe in guns rights, you got the NRA. You can believe in civil liberties, you have the ACLU. Yep. You can even believe in animals' rights, and you got groups doing that. You can believe in pets getting treated better, and there's groups for that. Right. Where's the voice of entrepreneurs in American life? Yeah. And it's just this big hole in American society that we've never had the equivalent of that. You can drive a car and have AAA advocating for you. Exactly. But if you're one of millions of people starting a business in America, where is the voice of that? And there's always been a small business advocacy network, but that can include a business that's 50 years old and has 200 people in it. What about someone starting in the first early years when it's like 1 or 3 or 5 or 20 people just getting going? How do they prove themselves, right? And those early fragile years of starting something are the hardest, and it's so easy to die as a business that you need someone fighting for that. And so that's what we built. And with Right to Start, we call it Right to Start because we really do think of it as we think of entrepreneurial opportunity as a fundamental right that everyone in the world should have access to, which means that you should be able to start and build and grow your own version of the American dream or whatever dream you want to pursue.
Right.
And that our job as an organization should be to break down barriers for everyone that wants to realize that right. Just like you've got a right to speech or you've got a right to worship, you have a right to start.
Right.
It's just born. You're born with it.
Right.
And so we launched 5 years ago. And we have now spread to have an active presence in 34 states. We've had people on the ground. We've got 7 coalitions we're actively building right now where we have actual presence, grassroots on the ground. We've got about 70 people all told across their entire organizational network. And we've had 22 state legislatures introduce over 60 Right to Start Act bills at state legislatures. We've had 7 states copy our ideas at the statewide level, including 3 states that actually passed laws and had them signed into enactment by governors. Most recently, just 3 weeks ago in the state of Indiana, Governor Braun just signed the Right to Start Act.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And it was passed in Indiana, it was passed with 97% of the legislators voting for it. That's how bipartisan this is. That's how unifying this is. Okay. So at a time of great division in America, we found that this is one of the only things we agree on anymore. Right. Is that everyone should be able to access entrepreneurship, and they deserve a fair shot. So,
what actually is the right? Can you just tell for our listeners what does the right actually entail? As put the policy into play.
Yeah. What are the policies? We've actually got a menu of policies on our website. So on righttostart.org, if you go to Field Guide for Policymakers, we got a bunch of ideas, and we actually go to states and cities and counties and the federal government. And we say, look, here's our ideas. What do you think? What's going to work in this state or the city? And by and large, the policymakers and the community have actually come up with a set of ideas that they kind of center around. One is put someone in charge of entrepreneurship in your state or your city or your county. Amazingly enough, in America, very few states or cities have anyone in charge of their entrepreneurs. In fact, if you go to Washington, D.C. and you walk in the White House and you say, I'd like to talk to the person in charge of entrepreneurship, there's no one there. America has never had someone in charge of entrepreneurship before. So this is the same across our cities and our states too. It's like this thing we just take for granted. So 1, put someone in charge. 2, have that person coordinate policymaking across all these different aspects. We talked earlier about how entrepreneurship is affected by not just the regulations and tax policy, but also healthcare, childcare, education, government contracting, workforce development, economic development, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many things. Everything affects entrepreneurs, and everything can either make or break an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs die deaths of 1,000 cuts. They don't. It's not just one thing.
No.
So coordinate policy, and then also start tracking data around entrepreneurs. Amazingly enough, we have very bad data. We don't even know what's working and not working with entrepreneurs to help them in any particular place. And then open up government contracting. So every state is a little different in how they embody these right to start ideas.
Right.
But they'll have variations of open up government contracting, start tracking data around who gets government contracts, the age of the business, who are they coming from, who are they, what's their walk of life, all those things that currently don't get done. And then some states add in even more. We have stuff around economic development reform, workforce reform, and we're going to roll out even more ideas later this year.
Nice.
So the idea is that entrepreneurship is a 360-degree issue in American life, and we need 360 degrees of ideas to tackle them.
I love it. That's powerful, man. And so as we come up on the 250-year anniversary of America, any big plans for that? Anything that you're kind of cooking, or you like what? How do you leverage that?
We're getting ready to celebrate the 250 in a big way. So 250, I'm old enough now to remember a little of America's 200th celebration, and also the Statue of Liberty's 100th birthday in the early 80s.
Okay.
And both of those became pretty big events. And they become big events because not just because it's like a celebration and all that. That's kind of, it's fireworks and it's kind of done with once it's over and done.
Yeah.
But what they become is they become fundamental moments to re-ask that question, who we are as a people and where are we headed as a people.
Right.
And that happened in 1976. It happened, when the Statue of Liberty had its 100th. I think it was 1984. And it's like, who are we? Where are we headed, America? And right now, that question seems to dominate even more than before.
Yes.
It's like a real question. Like, what are we? Are we even a country? Yes. Are we even viable as a unified country anymore? Yes. It's a question that's on people's minds. It's like an awful question to ask when people are asking that. So we're going to use America's 250th to launch a national campaign. We call it America the Entrepreneurial. And the focus, just like America the Beautiful. And the idea is that we need to renew the entrepreneurial promise of America for a new generation. And because it's America's 250th startup birthday, as we call it, we want to get 250,000 Americans engaged in this effort to renew the entrepreneurial promise and take action in some way to help advance that mission.
Nice. Wow, that's powerful. And so is information up already, or do you need some more time, or how do people join in, or what's the next step? What's the call?
Well, they can join if just on our website any moment. You can go to righttostart.org. They can sign up. But we are launching just in a few weeks now. We're going to launch a new site just for America the Entrepreneurial.
Got it.
Okay. And it'll have like real actions that people can take. And we're going to be doing more and more types of campaigns throughout the year that say, here's one way you can do it. Here's another way you can do it. Here's a way to get your friends and neighbors and family members involved. It becomes something that everyone can do, whether it's an entrepreneur, hosting an open house, to someone hosting a meetup to talk about these issues, to someone visiting their leader or their community leader, their chamber of commerce to talk about how to engage entrepreneurs differently. There's many, many ways we can do this, and we want to give people the tools to do it in their own way.
Nice. I ask everyone this question. This is my last question. I ask everyone this, and then we'll do a call to action. You give your handles. Can you tell me about a time when you had to hold on to hope? This could be professional, personal, marital, in any way. You were facing something and you really were perplexed, and you had to hold on to hope. What was the outcome, and kind of how did you make it through it?
Well, I've been through multiple moments like that in life, in so many different ways. I'll give you this is like a concrete example of just how things that you think aren't going to work out, and you feel like, you put years into something and it flopped, and then what do? And it actually ended up being better. Nice. So I'd been writing this book called The Rainforest around building entrepreneurship ecosystems, building entrepreneurial economies. And I'd been lucky enough to actually get a deal with like a publisher. And nice. I thought I was some pretty hot stuff, and I wrote the book. I spent a couple years doing this book and sent it to the publisher. And then they wrote back and said, it's awful. And they said, we're going to have a new writer rewrite the whole thing for you, and it's not going to come out for another couple years. And I said, I was crushed. I mean, I was totally, utterly crushed. They basically just said everything I did was awful. I'd spent 2 years working on it. And they were going to rewrite it for me and how is that even my work anymore? It just crushing at so many levels. I remember that night just lying on the floor, like crumpled up, just like thinking, what is this? Like just, all wasted all this effort.
Right.
And so I started talking to some people, and I got some advice that said, there's all these new tools coming out to publish it on your own. You don't need to go through a publisher anymore. This was just self-publishing was just starting to really break out. All the tools now you have to do it are everywhere, but back then it wasn't considered a viable path. So they said you can do it, and you can control everything. And so I did it. Essentially, we got out of the contract with the publisher and published the book independently, created our own publishing brand, marketed it completely on our own. And that's the Rainforest book. And now it's out there, and it's had a real effect on people. It's been amazing to see it ripple out there as a lot of people have embraced the book as like their own. It's like a guide to how to build your own entrepreneurial ecosystem. And but that thing almost never came to be. And I just had to forge through. So I had to completely reinvent like what it meant to write a book and publish a book, to do it completely as an entrepreneur on my own. but it was hard to do it. And it was, I wouldn't recommend going through that trauma again, but now the tools are much easier to publish on your own than they were before.
Yeah. Wow. This has been great. Call to action for our listeners. What would be some of your final words, call to action? And then if you want to share your social handles or something, you can.
Yeah. Join us in the Right to Start movement. We're trying to expand entrepreneurial opportunity. Easy way to do it is to sign up for either our website, our newsletter, righttostart.org, or on our social. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We're trying to build our TikTok. That's like a new thing. We're trying to be hip to the kids these days. But then probably even more concretely, join this campaign for America the Entrepreneurial that's coming out soon. We're going to be running this all the way through America's Startup Birthday 2026, all the way through from now all the way through December, end of next year. Okay. And at the very heart of it, it's just talk about this issue that entrepreneurial opportunity is something every human being has a right to. Mm-hmm. Our system doesn't make it easy, but it's key to renewing and re-strengthening and rebooting this country again. Like, you cannot have a strong America, a renewed America, without strong entrepreneurship. Right. And it's an issue we've taken for granted. So talk about it, share your story, talk to your friends and your neighbors about it, post about it, write about it, meet with your leaders about it. Anything, even the smallest thing, will help advance this cause.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Victor, I want to thank you again for your time. This has been a wonderful conversation, and continue to do this great work that you're doing. We needed it, of course. The people that I know who have stepped out in entrepreneurship they've had some challenges, as you said, but they also have had great successes. And so being able to like bet on yourself and have a way to do that is necessary, especially in this country where I would say the vertebrae of America is capitalism, right? And so being able to get in the game and actually drive the car yourself, drive your life yourself, but having the right to start the car is necessary. And so just grateful for the work that you're doing, and kudos to you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm a huge fan of you and your work, and it's a real honor and privilege to be part of this.
Thanks. Likewise. So you've heard it here. Please tune in to us for the next guest. We will be back. Also, follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, and we are on Instagram. So please follow us there. New You Unlimited is also our website, newyouunlimited.com. You can feel free to follow us or go to our website. We'll be looking for you. In the meantime, take it easy. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of New Voices. Visit our website at www.newyouunlimited.com. That is NEWU Unlimited.com. Follow us on social media at New You Unlimited on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And a special thank you to our producer, Jesse Ulrich. If you're looking for self-improvement, join our programs for personal and professional development. New You is a way for diverse talent to imagine, discover, and actualize a 2.0 version of yourself. Bring your future into focus.